Sir, can you hear me? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
The scream came from seat 2A. Not loud, just sharp enough to slice through the low hum of the engines and shatter the peace of first class. A champagne glass rolled across the aisle. Someone gasped. And then came the silence, the kind that happens before chaos knows what to do with itself. Sir? Sir? Can you hear me? Luisa Bright was already unbuckling, her heart pounding so hard it drowned out the engines. She'd been serving coffee 2 rows back when she noticed the passenger in 2A, the one everyone whispered about in the crew lounge before takeoff. Kang Dae-Hyun, Billionaire CEO of Dae-Hyun Technologies. The man whose companies built the future while his face haunted magazines. Cold, flawless, untouchable, and now dying. He slumped sideways, eyes half open, skin the color of snow under cabin light. The pulse in his throat was faint, fluttering like it was trying to run away. Luisa's training kicked in. "I need the medical kit," she barked, ripping his seatbelt open. "And oxygen now." Her partner scrambled to obey. A flight full of millionaires watched as she dropped to her knees in designer heels, pressing her ear to his chest. Nothing. No breath. No heartbeat. She tilted his chin, sealed her mouth over his, and breathed. Once, twice, harder. Her hands began compressions. 30 beats. Breathe. 30 beats. Breathe. Someone sobbed. Someone prayed. The billionaire everyone thought was made of marble was now just a man. Fragile, breakable, fading under her palms. "Come on. Come on. Don't you dare quit on me," Luisa whispered, sweat breaking down her temple. "You don't look like the quitting type." The monitor beeped, once, faint, then again. His chest rose, weak but real, and when his eyes finally opened, dark and dazed, they locked straight onto hers. For a heartbeat, no one else existed. Not the flight, not the panic, not the whispers. Just the man who had built an empire, now alive because of her. He tried to speak, but only air came out. His gaze stayed fixed, unblinking, like he was trying to memorize her face through the haze. Then, just as the paramedics rushed in from the emergency landing, he caught her wrist, weakly, but enough to stop her in her tracks. "Don't go," he rasped, voice barely audible. "Stay." Luisa froze. The billionaire who never asked anyone for anything had just begged her not to leave. And that was the beginning, the moment that would upend both their worlds. Because somewhere between the sky and the ground, the man who didn't believe in love had already lost his heart to the woman who gave him back his life. The world came back in fragments, sterile white ceilings, the rhythmic beep of a heart monitor, the faint sting of oxygen in his nose. For a moment, Kang Dae-Hyun thought he was dreaming. Then the pain in his chest reminded him he wasn't. "Welcome back, Mr. Kang," said a calm voice. He turned his head slowly to find his personal doctor standing at his bedside. "You had a cardiac episode mid-flight," the man explained. "We made an emergency landing in San Francisco. You're stable now." Dae-Hyun blinked, processing. The flight, the fainting, and then her, that face. Those brown eyes that refused to panic even as death hovered. That voice, trembling but strong, whispering, "Come on, don't you dare quit on me." He sat up, ignoring the doctor's protests. "Where is she?" "Who, sir?" "The woman," he rasped. "The flight attendant who—" He paused, jaw tightening. "Who performed CPR." The doctor hesitated. "We only know she's American. She left after the paramedics took you in. Said she didn't want publicity. Find her. Mr. Kang, your company." I said, "Find her." The tone silenced everything. It was the voice that built empires, the kind that didn't accept no as a word. But when his assistant arrived hours later with news, it wasn't what he expected. "Sir, she's not answering any calls from the airline. She may have requested reassignment." "Reassignment?" His jaw flexed. "From saving my life?" His assistant swallowed. "It seems she doesn't want attention." Dae-Hyun leaned back against the pillows, his pulse quickening. "Not from weakness, but something darker that no one ever walked away from him. Not competitors, not partners, not women, and yet this woman. This calm, stunning flight attendant who had literally breathed life back into him, had vanished into thin air like a ghost. He exhaled slowly, eyes narrowing. Then I'll find her myself. 3 days later, the private jet touched down in Los Angeles. Dae-Hyun's world had returned to order, or at least the illusion of it. But the man in the mirror looked different. Gone was the icy detachment. In its place was something unrecognizable: curiosity. He scrolled through photo stills from the airline's security archive, every attendant except her, until one image appeared at a blurred capture from a passenger's video. Her head turned slightly, dark brown eyes focused, hair pulled into a neat bun, lips parted as she worked on him. Luisa Bright. The name tag glimmered faintly in the footage. Luisa Bright, he murmured. You saved me. His lips curved, not a smile exactly, but the shadow of one. And now you'll answer why. He stood, adjusted his tailored jacket, and gave the only command that mattered. Clear my week. I'm going to find her. For most men, finding a person in a city of millions was impossible. But Kang Dae-Hyun wasn't most men. By the time dawn hit Los Angeles, his team had already contacted every major airline operating that flight route. Private investigators were on standby. Even the airline CEO, a nervous man with too much sweat on his brow, was pacing outside Dae-Hyun's hotel suite. Mr. Kang, he stammered. We're doing everything possible, but our records show that Miss Bright requested emergency leave after the incident. She refused to disclose her next assignment. Refused. Dae-Hyun's tone dropped to a slow, quiet chill that could freeze steel. Yes, sir. She said she needed time off for personal reasons. He leaned back in his chair, tapping a finger against the armrest. And her address? Company policy prevents us from. The billionaire's gaze cut through him. I fund your technology division's entire fleet modernization program. Are you sure about that policy? 5 minutes later, he had the address. It was a modest apartment near Venice Beach. Small, warm-colored, alive with sound and chaos. Kids played in the alley. A street artist painted waves on a wall. And somewhere, the scent of cinnamon and coffee drifted through the air. Dae-Hyun stepped out of his sleek black Maybach, drawing stares instantly. Dark gray suit, gold cufflinks, eyes that looked like they'd seen the world and grown tired of it. And yet here he was, standing in front of a sun-faded door like a man chasing a dream he didn't understand. He raised his hand and knocked. No answer. He knocked again, sharper this time. The door finally opened, and there she was, Luisa Bright. Her curls were down now, soft against her shoulders. No makeup, just sun-kissed skin and eyes that somehow held both surprise and suspicion. When she saw him, she froze, one hand still gripping a coffee mug. Mr. Kang, she said slowly. How did you find you? He gave a faint, deliberate smile. I'm good at finding things I want. Her brow arched. And what exactly do you want, sir? He met her eyes without flinching. To thank you. Properly. She blinked. You already did. The hospital said you donated to the airline's medical emergency fund. That's business. He stepped a little closer, his voice lower. This is personal. Luisa tilted her head. Personal? You almost died. I just did my job. Most people panic under pressure, he said. You didn't. You kept me alive. She crossed her arms, forcing a smirk. So what, you track down every employee who does their job well? A ghost of amusement flickered across his face. Only the ones who make me forget I almost died. Her heartbeat stuttered. His tone wasn't flirtatious. It was something far more dangerous. Intense. Certain. Luisa swallowed hard, masking her nerves with a smile. Look, Mr. Kang, I appreciate what you're doing, but I don't want attention or whatever this is. I don't do attention, he replied. I do intention. The air between them shifted, heavier, charged. Then his phone buzzed. He ignored it. I'll make this simple, Miss Bright, he said. Dinner. One evening. My driver will pick you up tomorrow. I can't. Can't, he echoed, eyes narrowing slightly. Or won't. Both. She took a step back, her voice steady but her pulse racing. You don't even know me. Yet, he said, a small, knowing smile tugging at his lips. Before she could answer, he turned and walked back toward his car, his cologne lingering like a promise she didn't want to admit she felt. When the door shut behind her, Luisa leaned against it, exhaling shakily. What the hell just happened? She whispered. Across the street, from the back seat of his Maybach, Kang Dae-Hyun watched the light in her window flicker on. He didn't smile. Not quite. But his voice was calm as he said to his driver, "Cancel my meetings for tomorrow. She'll say yes eventually." Luisa told herself she wasn't going. All day, she repeated it like a prayer while rearranging pillows, checking flight rosters, and trying to forget the way his eyes had pinned her in that doorway. But by sunset, she found herself standing in front of her mirror, wearing the one black dress she swore she'd never wear again. "Girl," she muttered at her reflection, "you are not doing this because he's fine. You're doing this because you're polite." Her reflection wasn't buying it. When the knock came, her heart skipped. A man in a crisp suit stood outside her door. Not Kang Dae-Hyun, but his driver. "Miss Bright?" he asked, bowing slightly. "Mr. Kang is expecting you." The car ride was silent. Too silent. The city lights blurred past, golden streaks of motion that only made her more aware of the storm inside her chest. When they finally stopped, she realized it wasn't some crowded restaurant, that it was a rooftop. Wind brushed her face as she stepped out, the view stretching wide, the Los Angeles skyline glowing beneath a canopy of stars. And there he was, standing near the edge in a perfectly tailored black suit, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a glass of red wine. Kang Dae-Hyun turned as she approached. His gaze traveled, not lustful but deliberate, as if memorizing details. "You came," he said simply. "I didn't say I would. You also didn't say you wouldn't." She frowned. "You really don't take no for an answer, do you?" He tilted his head slightly. "When you've built an empire from nothing, no stops sounding like a full sentence." She huffed a laugh despite herself. "You sound exhausting. And yet you're here." He gestured toward the table. Simple, elegant, candles flickering against crystal and white linen. The scent of truffle and sea salt lingered in the air. She sat down cautiously. "So what's this about, really? Gratitude? Guilt? Or do you just enjoy making people uncomfortable?" He studied her, then said, "Curiosity. About me. About why a woman who saved a stranger's life looked like she regretted it the moment he opened his eyes." The question hit harder than she expected. She looked away. "Because I don't like attention." "Attention is different from consequence," he said quietly. She glanced at him, uncertain what he meant. "What kind of consequence?" "The kind that starts when two worlds meet that were never supposed to." There it was again, that unnerving calm in his tone, the quiet confidence of a man used to controlling outcomes, not feelings. "Mr. Kang," she said, forcing a smile, "you're used to people bending around your schedule, your power, your money. But I'm not part of your empire." He leaned forward, voice lower. "And yet, for a few seconds on that plane, my life depended on you." Luisa froze. His words weren't romantic. They were devastatingly real. Then he smiled faintly. "You can call me Dae-Hyun." She swallowed. "You can call me Miss Bright." His laugh was quiet, deep, the kind that made her stomach tighten for reasons she didn't want to name. Dinner unfolded with a strange rhythm. Guarded banter, subtle glances, moments of silence that spoke louder than words. By the end, she stood, adjusting her dress. "Thank you for dinner. I'm glad you're alive. That's where this ends." He rose too, stepping close enough that she could feel the warmth of his breath, smell the faint spice of his cologne. "You say that," he murmured. "But something tells me this is just the beginning." Her pulse betrayed her. "Don't get used to it." "I won't have to," he said, eyes glinting. "You'll come to me." Luisa forced a laugh, turned and walked away, but she felt his gaze follow her all the way to the elevator. When the doors closed, she exhaled hard. "Girl, you are in trouble," she whispered to herself. And across the rooftop, Kang Dae-Hyun watched the city glitter, his mind already made up. "I'm not losing this one," he said under his breath. Not her. For 3 days, Luisa convinced herself she'd imagined the spark. That rooftop dinner? A one-time fluke. The look in his eyes? Gratitude, nothing more. She went back to work. Coffee, checklists, turbulence, the rhythm of the sky that had always felt safer than the ground. But safety ended when she walked into the crew briefing room on Thursday morning. "Luisa Bright?" said her supervisor. "Congratulations, you've been reassigned to VIP international routes. Effective immediately." Luisa blinked. "Wait, what? I didn't apply for promotion." The supervisor smiled tightly. "Special request from the Seoul executive line. Apparently someone up high wanted our best." Her stomach dropped. "Someone? Name wasn't given," he said. "But your next flight leaves tomorrow. Destination, Seoul." 12 hours later, Luisa stood at the boarding gate, her nerves in chaos. She told herself it was coincidence, until she stepped into the first-class cabin and froze. Seat 2A. Him. Kang Dae-Hyun looked up from his laptop, expression unreadable but eyes unmistakably deliberate. "Miss Bright," he said smoothly. "We meet again." She inhaled through her nose. "You did not." He gestured toward the seat beside him. "The universe did." "The universe doesn't have a corporate credit card," she muttered under her breath, then forced a professional smile. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Kang." "Thank you," he said. "I trust you'll keep me safe again." The nerve of him. And yet her pulse betrayed her. The flight felt longer than any she'd worked. Every time she passed his seat, he was watching, not rudely, but with a quiet, unnerving focus. When she served his meal, their fingers brushed. He didn't move away. "You're persistent," she said finally, leaning close so no one could hear. "I'm patient," he corrected softly. "Persistence is noisy. Patience wins." Her lips parted, ready to fire back, but the words disappeared when she saw the faint scar near his collar, a reminder of how close he'd come to dying. He noticed her gaze, smiled faintly. "You left before I could say thank you properly. You already said it. I wasn't finished." The tension stretched, thin, electric. When turbulence hit, the plane jolted. Instinctively, his hand found hers on the armrest. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then he released it, but not his gaze. "Still calm under pressure," he murmured. "Still impossible under any circumstance." She shot back. He chuckled quietly, and the sound hit something deep inside her chest. After landing, she tried to slip away unnoticed. But the moment she exited the airport staff gate, a black Bentley waited at the curb. "Miss Bright?" asked the driver. "Mr. Kang requested I escort you to your hotel." She blinked. "He requested?" "Yes, ma'am. He said you shouldn't have to carry your own bags in his city." Luisa pressed her lips together. "Tell your boss that flight attendants carry entire planes on their backs. He'll survive without trying to manage mine." But when she got to her tiny crew hotel later that night, a message was waiting at the front desk. Handwritten, on heavy cream paper. "You don't have to run. Seoul is big enough for both of us. H." She stared at the note, half infuriated, half flattered. Outside, the city pulsed with neon and noise. Inside, her heart did something it hadn't done in years. Ache with curiosity. "Why can't you just be normal?" she whispered, tossing the note on the desk. But she couldn't stop smiling. And somewhere across town, in a penthouse overlooking the Han River, Kang Dae-Hyun poured himself a drink, eyes glinting at the thought of her. "Patience," he murmured. "She'll come to me." Seoul felt too alive for her thoughts. The streets buzzed with energy. Food stalls steaming, signs glowing, taxis honking like impatient rhythm sections. Luisa Bright had promised herself one thing before leaving the hotel that morning. No billionaire detours. She was here for a short layover, a few sightseeing hours, And that was it. No phone calls, no letters, no mysterious CEOs with impossible eyes. She pulled her scarf higher against the cool spring air and blended into the crowd, smiling as she stopped at a vendor selling hotteok, sweet Korean pancakes dripping with brown sugar. "One, please," she said, her accent making the old vendor beam. "Pretty girl," he laughed. "Where from?" "Virginia," she answered, handing him cash. "And I'm trying to stay out of trouble." The man winked. "Then don't look behind you." She frowned and turned. There he was, in a charcoal coat, collar up, hands in his pockets, watching her like she was the only thing moving in the busy square. Her stomach dropped. "Oh no," she muttered. "No, no, no. Morning, Miss Bright." His voice was smooth as silk and twice as dangerous. "Are you following me now?" "Following?" His tone feigned innocence. "It's called coincidence. Seoul's a small city." She blinked. 10 million people live here, Mr. Kang." "Exactly," he said, smiling faintly. "And I found the only one worth seeing." Her jaw tightened. "You're ridiculous." "And yet," he said, stepping closer, "you're smiling." "I'm grimacing." Semantics. They walked side by side through the market, bickering like old friends who didn't realize they'd fallen into rhythm. He asked questions about her job. She dodged them with sass. She teased him about his immaculate shoes. He bought her a pair of handmade earrings when she lingered too long at a jewelry stall. "I'm not taking those," she said. "You already did." He was right. She was holding the little paper bag before she even realized it. "You can't just buy things for people like that." "Why not?" "Because it feels like attention," he offered. "Control," she corrected. He stopped walking. The noise of the market faded for a heartbeat as their eyes met. "I'm not trying to control you, Luisa," he said softly. "I just don't know another way to show I care." Her pulse stumbled at the sound of her name, the first time he'd said it without formality, like a secret. She looked away quickly. "Care? You don't even know me." "I know the sound of your voice when you're saving my life," he said quietly. "That's more truth than most people ever give me." Her throat tightened. "You're good with words, you know that? I'm better with intentions." "Then intend to leave me alone," she whispered, but it came out weaker than she meant. He smiled, small but genuine. "Can't promise that." By the time they reached the Han River, dusk had turned the city gold. Streetlights shimmered on the water, couples strolled hand in hand, and the air carried the scent of roasted chestnuts. Luisa found herself laughing at something he said. Really laughing, the kind that reached her eyes. He looked at her for a long moment, quiet, admiring. "You should do that more often." "What?" "Smile like you mean it." She rolled her eyes, but her cheeks warmed. "You're impossible. And you're tired of pretending you don't like that." She opened her mouth to retort, but a sudden gust of wind caught her scarf, sending it flying. He caught it midair, elegant, effortless, and draped it back around her neck with a precision that made her pulse race. His fingers brushed her collarbone, just for a second, but it was enough. They both froze. The city noise faded. The world felt very small. Then he said softly, "Dinner, tomorrow, my treat." "Why?" "Because every time I leave your presence, I regret it." Luisa hesitated, then sighed. "Fine, dinner. But only because I'm hungry, not because you're charming." He grinned, low and satisfied. "Whatever helps you sleep at night, Miss Bright." As she walked away, scarf fluttering, she didn't see his expression change. The faint smile replaced by something deeper, something that looked dangerously close to hope. The restaurant overlooked the Han River. All glass, candlelight, and quiet luxury. Luisa stood at the entrance, clutching her clutch bag like it might protect her from bad decisions. She was 30 minutes early. Why? She didn't know. Maybe because she wanted to prove she wasn't nervous. Or maybe because deep down she was. Her reflection in the mirrored doors was a different woman than the one who had screamed instructions during a midair emergency. Tonight, she wore a cream dress that brushed her knees, gold hoops that glowed against her skin, and an air of calm she didn't feel. The hostess smiled. Table for two? Mr. Kang has already arrived. Of course he had. When she entered, Dae-Hyun stood. Gone was the sharp suit and executive chill. Tonight, he was in a dark turtleneck and tailored jacket, the kind of casual that still whispered money. "Miss Bright," he said, pulling her chair out. His voice was lower tonight, like the city had softened it. "You're early," she said. "I was afraid you wouldn't come. And yet you reserved the most dramatic view." She gestured toward the floor-to-ceiling glass where the river shimmered, dotted with reflections from passing boats. "I don't do small gestures. I'm noticing that." Dinner began with Hamel Pagean and a bottle of white wine he'd chosen himself. She tried not to enjoy it, but she did. He asked her about flying, what it felt like to spend life between clouds and strangers. She asked him if he ever got tired of running empires. "I don't run empires," he said. "I build things people don't forget." Sounds lonely. He met her gaze. "It is. Until recently." She looked away quickly, focusing on the flicker of her candle. "You shouldn't flirt like that." "Why?" "Because it works," she said before she could stop herself. He smiled, slow, triumphant, but somehow gentle. "Then I'll keep doing it." Halfway through dessert, their laughter came easy. She told him stories about difficult passengers. He told her how his assistant once mistook a $2 million prototype for a coffee maker. And when she teased him for his arrogance, he surprised her by laughing too. "Most people don't talk to me like that," he admitted. "Most people probably want something from you. And you, I want to finish this chocolate soufflé without embarrassing myself," she said. He chuckled, eyes glinting. "That's the most honest thing anyone said to me all week." When they finally stepped outside, Seoul was alive. The bridge lights glowed gold, and a soft breeze rippled off the river. He walked beside her, close enough that their hands brushed. Once, twice. By the third time, he didn't move his away. "Luisa," he said softly, "do you ever wonder why things happen the way they do?" "Sometimes," she said, looking out over the water. "But I've stopped trying to control it. I just keep flying." He smiled faintly. "And I keep falling." She turned to him, and for a moment neither spoke. The city was a blur behind them, but everything else felt sharply in focus. Then, almost as if testing a boundary neither of them had the courage to name, he brushed a loose strand of her hair behind her ear. Her breath caught. "I should go," she whispered. He nodded, though his eyes didn't move from her face. "I'll walk you." They stopped in front of her hotel. The air between them felt electric, something both of them understood but couldn't define. "Thank you for dinner," she said softly. "Thank you for coming." She hesitated, then smiled. "You're not as cold as they say. And you're not as untouchable as you pretend," he replied. Her heart skipped. "Good night, Mr. Kang." He leaned in slightly, his voice barely a whisper. "Good night, Luisa." As she turned and walked away, her pulse fluttered like turbulence she couldn't control. And across the street, Kang Dae-Hyun stood watching, his face unreadable. But his eyes carried a truth he couldn't yet say aloud. He was already in far too deep. The morning after their dinner, Seoul woke up to headlines. Kang Dae-Hyun spotted with mystery woman, romantic dinner by Han River, photos exclusive to Seoul Daily. Billionaire CEO seen smiling for the first time in years. The photos were grainy, taken from across the river, but they didn't need to be high definition to set the internet on fire. Dae-Hyun was leaning close, smiling down at Luisa as she laughed. In another, the worst one, his hand brushed her cheek. By sunrise, hashtags trended globally. By 8 a.m. Luisa's phone was a war zone. Who is she? Is she his new fiancée? Gold digger alert. Pretty for a flight attendant. Her co-workers stared during the morning briefing, whispering behind coffee cups. Even Captain Wu looked uneasy. "Luisa," he said quietly, pulling her aside. "Management called. They saw the photos." Her stomach dropped. "Oh my God, Captain. It's not what it looks like." "I know," he said quickly. "But the airline doesn't like visibility, especially with high-profile passengers. They've asked you to take temporary leave until things calm down." "Leave?" she echoed, her throat tightening. As in? Paid suspension, he added softly. Just until the media moves on. But they both knew that kind of scandal didn't just move on. Not when your face was everywhere. Not when the man beside you was one of Asia's most powerful CEOs. Meanwhile, across town, the Dae-Hyun Technologies headquarters buzzed like a hornet's nest. Executives, PR teams, and board members gathered in a tense meeting. Mr. Kang, his publicist said carefully, sliding a tablet across the table. This photo has been shared more than 2 million times. Dae-Hyun glanced down. One look. That single frame of him smiling at Luisa, and something sharp and protective twisted inside him. Do nothing, he said. The room fell silent. Sir, the PR head stammered. That's not advisable. If you deny, the story dies. If you stay quiet, it stays alive, interrupted another. People will assume she's a woman who saved my life, Dae-Hyun said coldly. And if the world can't tell the difference between gratitude and gossip, that's their problem. Not mine. But, sir, the shareholders. Tell them, he said, standing, that I don't answer to clickbait. And with that, he walked out, his jaw tight and eyes dark. By late afternoon, Luisa sat in her small hotel room, blinds drawn, scrolling through chaos. Comment sections, articles, gossip blogs. All spinning their own stories. She felt exposed, helpless, like the ground beneath her was slipping. A soft knock broke the silence. When she opened the door, her breath caught. Mr. Kang? He stood there in a black coat, sunglasses pushed up into his hair, looking nothing like the glossy man in the photos. You shouldn't be here alone, he said quietly. How did you? I had your crew list checked. Of course you did. She sighed. You shouldn't be here either. People already think we're. Let them think what they want, he said firmly. You're not losing your job over me. I already have. The words hit him harder than she meant them to. For a moment he said nothing, just stared at her. At the exhaustion beneath her brave face. Pack your things, he said finally. What? You're staying at my penthouse. It's safer there. She laughed dryly. You think moving in with you will help the rumors? He stepped closer, his tone low. I don't care about rumors. I care about you. The air between them stilled. For a second, she forgot to breathe. Because behind his usual control, there was something raw, unguarded in his eyes. Dae-Hyun, she whispered. You're making this worse. Maybe, he said softly. But at least I'll know you're safe. That night, cameras followed his car again. When Luisa stepped out, the city lights flared, and Seoul gasped as the story grew bigger. The billionaire wasn't denying anything. And the world was watching every move. But up in his penthouse, high above the noise, he turned to her and said simply, Let them talk. You saved my life once. Now it's my turn to protect yours. The elevator doors whispered open to reveal a private world above Seoul, glass walls, soft gold lighting, and a skyline so close it felt like you could touch the stars. Luisa hesitated at the threshold, clutching the strap of her small bag. Wow, she breathed. You actually live in the sky. Dae-Hyun said nothing, only walked ahead with the same quiet confidence that had turned his name into a legend. But there was a subtle unease in the air, a tension that hummed beneath the hum of the city below. Come in, he said finally. You're safe here. Safe. The word landed softly, but she didn't quite believe it. Not when cameras had chased her from the airport. Not when strangers online had torn her apart for simply existing near him.
Find out what happens in their relationship in the next episode, which is coming up soon, by clicking on the notification icon. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please do not forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Also tell us the country you are watching us from in the comments section so that we will make a story for you.